Hi everyone, I'm Jennifer Gagnon with the Forest Landowner Education Program at Virginia Tech, and today I'm joining you from my office, not from the woods. I do have a picture of the woods on the wall behind me, but I'm doing the introduction for this video indoors because I'm introducing part 2 of my video, Managing a Hardwood Forest. Part 1 aired on January 8th, and I encourage you to go to the Virginia Forest Landowner Education Program's YouTube channel to watch that video. But I'll also give you a brief summary of what we covered. So in Part 1, David Richert, a local forester, took us to a privately owned woodlot in Pulaski County. Pulaski County is in the New River Valley in Southwest Virginia. And this woodlot has been owned by the same family for well over 100 years. And it's an Appalachian hardwood forest, and it's a pretty special place because there is no evidence of a timber harvest having occurred on this property before. Highly unusual. Most of our forests in Virginia have been cut over at least once, if not multiple times. So what we saw in this forest was that it was very dense. There were a lot of trees out there, which means there wasn't a lot of sunlight getting to the forest floor. We also found a lot of very large, over-mature trees that were starting to decline or have already died. The landowners walked through their property, and even though income was not their main ownership goal, they decided that they were losing a lot of value. These older trees were dying, and they were just rotting on the forest floor. They also realized they weren't getting the new forest that they wanted. So most of the regeneration that was occurring in this forest was shade-tolerant species. So beech, red maple, not species that are terribly valuable in the timber industry in Virginia. And so they wanted to do the timber harvest to open up the canopy, get more sunlight to the forest floor, and encourage regeneration of desirable species like oaks and hickories. So in part 2 of this video, David Richert is going to show us what this site looks like after the timber harvest. Enjoy!
So this is a good visualization of what we're trying to achieve here with this timber harvest. You can see we've left some nice trees. That one white oak there is probably 24 to 26 inches. That's still got decent form. The smaller one there is probably 14 to 16 inches. But we've also, at the same time that we've left some of these trees, we've gotten rid of a lot of the trees that are either over mature, in decline. We've cut a lot of the beech out of here. We've cut a lot of the lower value species like the gum, like the red maple, possibly some of the cucumber trees. And we're trying to affect that level of light significantly here. We are in fact trying to get this open feel that we have here. We're going to be leaving some of those larger trees to provide some canopy, provide some seed sources, and also to continue to grow over the next 30 to 40 years. But we're trying to cut the overall area hard enough to reduce the stocking level and increase the light level to the point where we actually get some really good oak and hickory regeneration in this stand. It's a really good example of how, judging from the outside of the tree, it looks like it's a very healthy, very productive 24-inch oak tree. But if you look at it here, it's full of decay, and this decay is to the point where there is literally no value that can be extracted from a timber standpoint. The firewood people and the pulpwood people don't want it because it's too large, too difficult to work with, and the sawmills certainly don't want it because there's no good fiber in here, so it'll make very poor boards. And you know, effectively this entire tree here has very little value, so it's already gone too far the other way, and we'll leave it as a place for a hiker or passerby in the woods to eat their lunch someday. In addition to being a good bench for a tired passerby, this tree here, which we will leave in the woods, it will eventually decay. It may trap some nutrients and leaves on the uphill side. Maybe a chance that an acorn could roll under there someday and sprout and take root and not be immediately eaten by a hungry deer. So in terms of value, there's still plenty of value to this tree. It's just we'll be realizing it on a different level. So this is a perfect example here of what we're trying to salvage. If you look at this stump and this butt section, which is about 7 feet long, we've had to cut that off from the merchantable log that was taken to the sawmill. And we had to do that because when you see from this side here, it's got a huge cavity. And so from the outside, I'm a forester, I'm looking at that tree, I'm saying, wow, that's beautiful. That's doing so well. It's so majestic. Let's just continue to get the value of that tree in its living form. What we can't see is what's on the inside. And so what we're trying to do as we make these decisions of what to cut and what to liquidate is to try and go ahead and get the value of this now before it falls down and damages a bunch of other trees in the process. Now this slash, or these limbs or laps, depending on what part of the world you're from, you may call them a different thing, but this debris, this coarse woody debris here, when people see a whole woodlot full of it, they think, oh my goodness, that's such a disgusting mess. Why couldn't they have done something with it? But I'd really like to point out the value of this material being left on the ground. If you think about where in the tree the most nutrients are found, it's going to be in all these fine branches here. These fine branches is where most of the nutrients that exist in a tree, it's where they occur. And so this is just like amazing time release fertilizer. So if you look at when and how these leaves decay and these fine branches decay, the leaves will probably decay within a year or two and release this amazing amount of nutrient back into the soil. The twigs, the finer branches, will probably decay in a time span of 2 to 5 years. So as this awful, ugly slash pile decays, in the next 5 to 10 years, this is going to be amazing slow release fertilizer. The other thing we have to think about with these laps that are left on the ground, these are amazing deer protectors. So if you think about a seedling underneath this material, as a hungry deer comes padding along, it's probably not going to dig all the way in through this brush to get to that little seedling. And yet that seedling still gets the sunlight. It's able to grow 3 feet out of the ground before the deer will ever even notice it. So following this harvest, following this opening of the canopy, we'll have seedlings starting to emerge in this slash, and the slash is decaying. It's going down and the seedlings are coming up through, and this is a process that will occur over the next 3 to 5 years, and it'll be amazing recycling of nutrients and offering of protection for that little seedling. So again, this great big monstrous tree, no different from many of the other trees we've been looking at here at this woodlot today. It looks great on the outside, not so great on the inside. So in terms of what we're trying to achieve through this timber harvest here, we're looking at a mix of 6 to 10 inch diameter trees. These are the trees that were already here. We're trying to leave those alone. They're doing well. We've got poplar, we've got hickory. We're also trying to create these openings here. You can see an opening sort of in the middle ground where there was perhaps a few very large mature oaks. Those have been cut and removed. We see the laps, and then create this mix where we have openings, larger trees that are left to grow, and then these 6 to 10 inch trees left to grow that we see here. And if we look throughout this stand, we have that mix. The question some of you may be asking is, can I just wait and let these trees die and then come in and harvest them before they rot? That's a good question. Certainly it is possible to do that. There's plenty of complexity with having to have just-in-time logging capability. But this tree right here, this was a red oak tree. It was in the harvest boundary. It's about 24 inches. It was standing dead. I think the first year we came in here to mark these trees, there were even some green leaves on them, but I could tell the tree was in decline. I knew it didn't have very long to live, and by the time the logger came in here to cut these trees down, it was in fact completely dead. And you see, even though it's dead, it's still sound. This tree, we will take it to the sawmill. It will have some value. They don't like it as well as they like the freshly harvested trees, but certainly it's got some value, and it's a way that we can capture some of that value before it rots on the ground. The thing I would emphasize here is that if that's your management strategy, it's going to take quite a bit of planning, quite a bit of luck to have someone capable of capturing that value in that very small window between the time the tree dies and it becomes too heavily defected or too heavily decayed to be worth a whole lot. So this here behind me is a good example of a brush crossing or a brush bridge, and what we had was a very small swale or water drainage that only had water in it occasionally, typically under periods of heavy rainfall. And what we did is we had the logger put a couple of logs running with the angle of the drainage down in the bottom to allow water to pass through, and then we put many loads of brush and laps and debris on top of it. And as we continued to drag logs over this crossing, we brought a little bit of soil into the mix, and so we have basically brush, debris, a little bit of soil, and it's set up nice. It's almost like maybe a type of concrete, and you can see this water here, it's actually impervious to water now, so it's not going to be filtering a lot of sediment down through this brush and getting into the stream channel. It's almost like you have a fixed surface that's on top of it, and the debris and the soil and the sediment is going to stay on top. The water's going to slowly drain through, and it's going to be filtered in quite a bit less sediment in that water when it does make the stream channel below.
Well, thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you learned something about hardwood management today. Thanks to David for teaching us today. And also thanks to the woodland owners for allowing us to be on their property and film this video. Please be sure to join us next week for another edition of 15 Minutes in the Forest. Have a great day.